Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into a time when the idea of keeping clean was more of a hopeful suggestion than an everyday reality. Picture yourself walking through a cramped medieval street, the air heavy with wood smoke, and something far less pleasant drifting up from the gutters. The cobblestones are slick from last night's rain, but that's not just water pooling between them, and the scent clings to your nose no matter how you try to breathe around it. Your tunic is coarse against your skin, the same one you've worn for days without a wash, and your hair has that sticky, matted weight that comes from a lifetime of washing only when you must. You're about to find out exactly what keeping clean meant to people back then, and you probably won't survive this without a shiver or two. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your walk at dawn, when the first market carts are rattling into town, pulled by oxen whose tails flick lazily at the morning flies. The vendors will soon be hawking their bread fish and root vegetables, but the scents from their baskets will have to fight against something more pungent. The stables, the tanneries, and the public latrines that empty into the same open drains snaking down the main street. In this world, bathing is a rare and calculated event, not the daily ritual you're used to. The water you might use to wash is often the same water used to soak hides or rinse chamber pots. And if you're unlucky enough to bathe in the wrong stream, your clean day could be your sickest. Here, cleanliness is mostly about appearance and smell, not germs, since nobody knows what germs are yet. You might rub your hands with sand or ash to scrape away dirt, or wipe your face with a linen cloth dipped in rose water, if you're wealthy enough to afford it. Most people settle for a quick rinse in a basin, maybe once a week, maybe less. The poor use whatever they can find: a trickle of water from a communal well, a bucket hauled from the river, or rainwater collected in barrels. And soap, that's a luxury in itself, often made from animal fat and lye harsh enough to strip your skin raw if you use it too often. Public bathhouses are a common solution, places where you pay for a tub of hot water, shared with friends, strangers, or sometimes both. In some towns, they're as much about socializing as they are about getting clean. You can imagine the chatter echoing off the wooden walls, the hiss of steam, the mingling of herbal scents from bundles of mint or lavender tossed into the water to mask less pleasant smells. But these places have a reputation for more than bathing. Gossip and illicit meetings flourish here, which eventually gives them a morally questionable status in the eyes of the church. In some places, the bathhouses close altogether, leaving people to improvise. When you leave the town's bustle and wander toward the countryside, you'll find people's methods even simpler. A farmer might strip down to wash in a stream after a long day's work, scrubbing with handfuls of sand or handfuls of moss. Clothes are rarely laundered. Instead, they're aired out in the breeze to shake off the worst odors. A wool tunic might last through an entire season before it's properly washed, and even then, the wash might mean beating it against rocks in cold water and hanging it in the sun. For the wealthy, keeping clean is more about layers and fragrance. A noblewoman might have a wooden tub in her chamber filled by servants carrying bucket after bucket of warmed water from the kitchen. She might bathe once a week using scented oils imported from the Mediterranean, her hair combed through with fine-toothed bone combs to remove lice. But no matter your status, the same challenge remains: the world outside your door is unavoidably dirty. The streets run with refuse, animals wander freely, and clean water is precious enough to be hoarded. And so in this medieval life you've stepped into clean is relative. It's a fleeting state easily undone by a walk to market or an hour in the fields. You begin to realize that staying clean isn't just a matter of soap and water. It's a dance with the environment, the seasons, and the limits of what's available. As you walk on, you pass a group of children playing by the riverbank, splashing in water you know has seen better days. Their laughter is bright, but you notice their bare feet, the dirt beneath their nails, and you start to wonder, how did anyone here truly believe they were keeping clean at all? The answer will unfold slowly in the rhythms of the day, in the rituals and little acts people cling to for a sense of dignity. And as the sun climbs higher over the crooked rooftops, you follow the trail of soap makers, herbalists, and traveling bathhouse keepers who try against all odds to sell a little cleanliness in a world that has almost none to spare. You leave the market square behind, the chatter of vendors fading as the narrow lane bends toward the smell of something sharp and alkaline. This is the soap maker's corner, though soap here isn't the pale perfumed bar you might imagine. Instead, you see lumps of mottled brown, sometimes streaked with white, drying on wooden racks. The maker, a stooped man with hands cracked from his own product, stirs a pot over a low fire. The mixture inside bubbles sluggishly animal fat, rendered from sheep or cattle mixed with lye made from wood ash. The scent is almost sour, the kind that clings to your nostrils. This soap will clean, yes, but it will also leave skin raw and tight, so it's used sparingly. Only the most fastidious or the most affluent can afford to use it regularly. In towns, soap like this is a mark of civility. Using it tells your neighbors you care about appearances, that you aspire to the refinement of the nobility. But in truth, most people rely on less costly methods. A handful of sand works just as well to scour dirt from hands and ash from the hearth, can be rubbed into hair to absorb grease. If you have rosemary or lavender in your garden, you might steep the leaves in hot water and use the infusion to rinse your face, a momentary escape from the grime of everyday life. As you continue walking, you notice a small building tucked between two houses, a public bathhouse. The door is open, and inside steam curls toward the rafters. The baths here are wooden tubs lined with linen, filled with water, heated in great iron cauldrons. Patrons pay a small fee, often in coins, sometimes in goods, and settle into the water for as long as they can. Some share tubs, others wait for a turn. Men and women bathe separately in most places, though in certain towns or on certain days, the rules are looser. The bathhouse keeper, a stout woman, with sleeves rolled high, drops bunches of dried herbs into the tubs. Mint for freshness, chamomile for calm, sometimes sage or thyme to ward off illness, though no one can see the microbes they're actually trying to avoid. You hear the soft slap of cloth against skin as bathers scrub themselves with rough linen or natural sponges. The sound is almost hypnotic. Here in this heat and steam, you feel as though you've stepped into a rare pocket of comfort in an otherwise cold and dirty world. But these bathhouses carry whispers too. People say you can catch more than warmth in them. Disease can spread in shared water, and the church has its suspicions about the immorality that might happen behind closed doors. In some places, religious authorities warn against bathing, too often believing it invites vanity or temptation. The tension between physical cleanliness and moral cleanliness runs like an undercurrent through medieval life. You begin to understand that staying clean here is never just about washing away dirt. It's about navigating an entire web of beliefs, taboos, and resources. Leaving the bathhouse, you head toward the outskirts of town, where the houses grow farther apart, and the smells shift from tanneries and cooking fires to open fields. Here, water comes directly from wells or rivers, and the act of washing is tied closely to the rhythms of work. A shepherd might rinse his hands and face in the river, after tending his flock, the cold water shocking, but refreshing. In summer, whole families might wade into shallow streams to splash away the dust of the day. In winter, water freezes in its bucket overnight, and washing becomes an ordeal of breaking ice before you can even wet a cloth. Clothing here is often cleaned in the same rivers where animals drink and women wash vegetables. You picture a group of washerwomen standing knee-deep in the current skirts, hitched high, pounding heavy woolen garments against smooth rocks. They use soap root or boiled plant ash, their fingers red and raw from the cold. The work is hard, and the clothes will never smell like they came from a modern laundry. They'll smell faintly of the river the plants used in the wash and the bodies that wear them. Personal grooming is its own challenge. Without mirrors, much of it is done by feel and habit. Combs are precious, often carved from bone or wood, and they double as weapons against lice and fleas. Children are inspected by parents, and any small movement in the hair is quickly pinched between fingernails. For those with means, oils and pomades mask odors and give hair a neat appearance. For everyone else, braiding or covering the hair is the easiest solution. As you watch, you begin to notice something striking. For all the hardship, there's an unspoken pride in these small acts of care. A woman pauses to wash her hands. Before kneading bread, a man scrapes the mud from his boots before entering the churchyard. Children rinse their faces before supper. These rituals are as much about dignity as they are about health. In a place where dirt is inevitable, the act of trying to keep clean, even imperfectly, is a statement about who you are and how you wish to be seen. It occurs to you that the medieval idea of clean is deeply contextual. If you could step back into your own time, these people would seem perpetually unwashed. But here now, as you walk among them, you see that they measure cleanliness not in sterilized surfaces or scented soaps, but in moments when you scrape the day's grime from your hands, or change into your least mended tunic, or smooth your hair before a feast day mass. It's a fleeting victory, but in this world, fleeting victories are still worth chasing. And so you keep walking, your senses tuned to the mingled scents of ash, mint, wool, and wood smoke, ready to see how far this delicate balance between filth and freshness can stretch. You turn down a road that runs alongside the town's mill stream, the steady churn of the water wheel filling the air with its rhythmic creak. Here you find another center of cleanliness, or at least the medieval version of it, the laundress's yard. Wooden tubs line the space, each brimming with cloudy water, the surface glistening with a thin sheen from the soap or ash mixed in. Women stand over them, sleeves rolled, their arms disappearing into the suds as they scrub at coarse linen shirts, woolen hose, and rough bedding. The sound is a steady slap and squelch, punctuated by bursts of laughter, or the occasional sharp exchange over whose turn it is at the rinsing trough. Laundry is as much social as it is practical. While the clothes soak, women share news from the market, talk about the coming feast day, or trade recipes for herbal washes. You notice one woman crumbling dried leaves into the water. Marjoram, she explains, to make the fabric smell sweeter. Another shakes her head and swears by vinegar, which not only softens the cloth, but keeps lice from settling into the seams. These little tricks are treasures passed from mother to daughter, woven into the rhythm of life as much as the spinning of thread or the baking of bread. Yet even here, cleanliness has its limits. The rinsing is done in the mill stream itself, which carries away the dirt, but also returns with whatever the tanneries, butchers, and privies have poured into it upstream. You watch a pair of boys splash in the shallows, their bare feet stirring up the sediment, and you realize that what's clean in this place is always relative to what's possible. It's not about removing every trace of dirt. It's about removing enough to be comfortable, respectable, and able to meet your neighbors without shame. From the laundress's yard, you wander toward a row of houses whose yards are dotted with drying racks. Garments hang like flags, stiff in the breeze, colors muted from repeated washing in harsh substances. Wool holds the scent of smoke, no matter how many times it's washed, while linen smells sharper, more like the plants it's been treated with. You pass a small wooden bench where a child sits, her hair spread out for her mother to comb. The mother's hands work deftly, parting and sectioning the comb's teeth, dragging slowly through. Every so often she pauses to pinch something between her fingers and flick it away. Hair care in this world is a battle against infestation. Lice, fleas, and even mites are common companions, and keeping them at bay is part of the daily routine. Some people wash their hair in infusions of rosemary or nettle to make it less inviting to pests. Others simply keep it braided or bound under cloth caps and hoods. For men, beards are either kept trimmed with small shears or left to grow wild. Both are equally common, though a neatly kept beard is a sign of a man with time and means to tend to it. Stepping inside one of the homes, you see that personal washing is done in the privacy of a small wooden basin. A jug of water drawn from the well or carried from the stream is poured in, and a cloth is used to sponge the body. The focus is on the hands, face, and feet, the parts most visible and most soiled by daily work. Full-body washes are rare, often reserved for special occasions or when illness demands it. If the season is warm, the basin might be placed outside in the sun. If cold, it's kept near the hearth, the fire taking the edge off the chill. Soap, when used here, is homemade. You spot a small pot on a shelf inside, which is a lump of pale, grainy soap with a sharp smell. It's used sparingly, more for stubborn stains on clothes than for skin. Instead, water itself is considered cleansing enough, especially when combined with vigorous scrubbing. For the poor, soap is an expense. For the wealthy, it's one of many imported luxuries that mark their status. You can't help but notice the importance of scent in all these practices. Without understanding bacteria, medieval people still knew that smell mattered both socially and personally. Scent could indicate health status and even moral character. A fresh-smelling person was assumed to be virtuous, while foul odors were sometimes linked to sin or moral decay. Herbs, flowers, and spices were used to mask the less pleasant realities of life. Lavender sachets tucked into clothing, mint sprigs rubbed on the skin, rosewater dabbed on the temples, all were part of the medieval toolkit for staying clean. As the sun dips lower, you wander past the churchyard where a stone trough, fed by a trickling spout, offers fresh water to anyone passing. A woman bends to wash her hands before entering for vespers, her fingers pink from the cold. She wipes them dry on her apron, straightens her back, and walks through the door with a quiet dignity. Watching her, you begin to understand something deeper in a world where dirt is constant. Cleaning yourself before entering a sacred space isn't just practical, it's spiritual. It's an offering of respect, a way of preparing both body and soul. And so you follow her example, splashing your own hands in the icy water, feeling the sting of cold against your skin. The dirt swirls away into the trough, gone for now, though you know it will return soon enough. Still, in that moment, there's a fleeting sense of renewal, a small victory, in a place where perfect cleanliness is impossible, but the effort is everything. You step back into the open air, leaving the churchyard behind, and the evening light stretches long and golden across the rooftops. A faint wind carries the mingled scents of hearth fires baking bread, and something sharper, the tang of boiled herbs. Following it, you find yourself at the edge of a small herbalist's stall, where bundles of drying plants hang in the warm glow of a lantern. This is where cleanliness begins before water ever touches skin. The herbalist, a wiry old man with nimble fingers, is tying up a bundle of sage. He tells you, without pausing his work, that each plant has its use. Mint to freshen breath, rosemary to cleanse wounds and strengthen the hair thyme to ward off illness, lavender to sweeten clothing and bedding. These herbs are as much a part of medieval hygiene as water and soap, especially for those who can't afford frequent baths. A few sprigs tucked into your clothes or crushed in your hands before a feast can transform the way you're perceived. In a place where everyone carries the dust of the streets with them, these scents are like armor. He shows you a small bowl of powder, ground orris root, pale and fine, which he says the wealthy use as a dry wash for the skin. You simply pat it on and brush it away, leaving a faint fragrance behind. It's an echo of the powders and perfumes used in faraway courts, adapted here to local means. For those who never travel far from the village, such luxuries are rare treasures to be used sparingly and saved for special days. Leaving the stall, you wander into a quieter lane. Here, homes are smaller, the walls leaning in toward each other, as if for warmth. At one doorway, a woman sits with a pile of linens in her lap, mending worn seams. Beside her is a shallow wooden chest with a lid propped open. Inside, you catch a glimpse of herbs and small cloth bundles nestled among the folded garments. She explains that they're meant to keep moths away, but they also help mask the scent of sweat that lingers in fabric long after washing. You think about how little in this world truly smells clean in the way you know it, and how much of medieval cleanliness is really about controlling the smells that can be controlled. A few streets over, you find the tannery. The smell reaches you long before the sight does, thick, acrid, and clinging. Workers here scrape animal hides clean, then soak them in vats of urine to soften them before dyeing. This too plays a role in hygiene, though not in the way you'd expect. Urine gathered in pots from households around town is also used in laundry for whitening linen. The ammonia in it cuts through grease and dirt better than most homemade soaps, though the smell is something you have to live with until the cloth is thoroughly rinsed. The practice is so common that no one here questions it. In fact, the richer the yellow of your linen when new, the prouder you might be of how well it's been treated. Just beyond the tannery is the riverbank where washerwomen work in the last of the day's light. They've been here for hours, and their hands are red from the cold water. One woman uses a wooden bat to beat the water from a heavy wool cloak, sending up a spray that catches the sunset. Another spreads a freshly washed sheet on the grass to dry, weighting the corners with stones. The rhythm of their work is steady, unhurried, but it's clear that each step, soak, scrub, rinse, beat, dry, is carved into memory. There's no rushing it. You cross the river by way of a narrow wooden bridge, your boots thumping on the planks. On the far side, you come to a small cottage with a faint light in the window. Inside, a family is gathered around the hearth. The father scrapes mud from his boots with a stick, before stepping onto the clean straw floor covering. The children sit near their mother, who dips a cloth into a bowl of warm water and wipes their faces one by one. She works methodically, paying special attention to the corners of their mouths and the tips of their ears. It's an intimate ritual, this nightly washing, and you can see how much it matters in a place where the day leaves its mark on every inch of skin. Before the children go to bed, the mother takes down a small comb and runs it through each child's hair. She holds the comb up to the firelight after every pass, checking for lice. When she finds one, she flicks it into the flames without a word. The children sit patiently, used to the routine. You realize that this is cleanliness at its most personal, not grand baths or scented oils, but the quiet daily defense against the small discomforts of life. As the night deepens, you step back outside. The street is nearly empty now, save for the glow of candles behind shutters and the sound of water trickling into a trough. You pause, feeling the cool air on your skin, carrying with it traces of everything you've encountered today. The smoke of hearth fires, the sharp bite of tannery fumes, the sweetness of drying lavender. Here, cleanliness isn't a fixed state, but a constant negotiation shaped by the materials at hand, the season, and the unspoken rules of the community. And tomorrow it will all begin again, because in this world, the dirt never truly leaves. It only shifts, replaced each day by new layers, and each night by the hope of washing away enough to start fresh. Morning breaks again, and the sound of a distant church bell rolls through the streets, calling people to the first prayers of the day. You're already awake, sitting on the edge of a wooden bed frame stuffed with straw, the coarse blanket pulled back, and the cool air touching your skin. It's not just the cold that wakes you, it's the faint itch on your arm, the reminder that the night is never entirely yours. The straw mattress beneath you holds more than just warmth. It harbors dust, the occasional flea, and the lingering scent of the people who've slept on it before. You stretch, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders, and you realize that keeping yourself clean here begins the moment you rise. In the corner of the room, a small pitcher of water stands next to a basin. This is your wash for the morning. You pour a little into the basin, watching it cloud slightly as it meets the dust from the night. A linen cloth serves as your sponge. You dip it, wring it out, and start with your face working slowly, savoring the cool sting as it wakes you fully. Then your hands, the fingers stained faintly from yesterday's work. Feet come last always because they are the most soiled. In this order, there is a logic. You start with what people will see first, and end with what is most hidden, so the water is still deceptively fresh for the face and hands. There's no soap this morning. It's not a daily luxury. Instead, you rely on the water itself and on the brisk rubbing of the cloth to dislodge whatever clings to your skin. If you had more water, you might rinse your hair, but today it stays braided, tucked away beneath a linen coif to keep dust from settling in. The coif will also protect you from lice, though not perfectly, and will keep your hair from tangling too badly before your next combing. Stepping outside, you join the slow stream of townspeople heading toward the well in the square. The well is a hub not just for water, but for conversation. You see women carrying wooden buckets, men leading donkeys laden with barrels, children running ahead to secure a place in the queue. Everyone needs water, and everyone watches each other's habits. The way you draw water, the amount you take, whether you spill any of these things, mark you in the eyes of your neighbors. Drawing too much might seem greedy. Drawing too little might mean you're neglecting your household. When it's your turn, you drop the bucket into the cool darkness and hear the splash far below. The rope creaks as you haul it up the wooden rim, wet and heavy in your hands. This water is precious. It's for cooking, drinking, and cleaning, and you have to decide carefully how much will go toward each. You fill your own jug and carry it home slowly, not wanting to waste a single drop. On your way back, you pass the cobbler's workshop. The smell of leather mixes with the faint tang of pitch. The cobbler is outside wiping his hands on a rag before kneeling to rinse them in a shallow bucket. He scrubs at his nails with a small sliver of soap, muttering that the pitch never truly comes out. His wife leans in the doorway, shaking out a tunic, before hanging it on a line to air. You watch the sunlight hit the cloth, catching on patches that have been mended again and again. Airing clothes is as important here as washing them. The fresh breeze lifts away some of the stale odors, even if it can't remove them entirely. Further along the street, a baker sets out trays of bread to cool. He dusts flour from his arms, with brisk slaps sending little clouds into the air. He'll wash before handling the loaves for customers, hands plunged into a basin kept behind the counter. Water changed once or twice a day. You notice how every trade has its own rhythm of cleaning tailored to the work and the materials at hand. The smith washes at midday after the morning's soot has settled on his skin. The tailor cleans his hands before touching fine fabrics. The fishmonger scrubs down with ash after gutting the day's catch. You pause by a narrow alley where a small stream runs channeled between stone walls. A woman kneels on the bank rinsing vegetables while her daughter splashes water onto her own face. The girl laughs at the shock of cold, then wipes her cheeks with her sleeve. The act is so quick, so unceremonious, yet it transforms her expression, eyes brighter, hair falling loose around her damp face. It strikes you again how small acts of cleanliness here carry a quiet dignity, even joy. At home again, you pour the last of your jug into the basin and set it by the door. This will be for visitors to wash their hands before entering a courtesy that speaks to your respect for them. It's an old custom, and though the water may be murky by the end of the day, offering it is as important as drinking it. In a place where water is never taken for granted, sharing it is a gesture of both hospitality and trust. As the day moves on, you start to notice the rhythm of cleanliness in the town. It's not a single act, but a constant weaving in and out of daily tasks, drawing water here, airing, bedding there, combing hair, by the fire scrubbing hands before a meal. You realize that in this world, you don't wait for dirt to build up and then remove it all at once. You chip away at it moment by moment until it becomes a shared habit, a community rhythm, an unspoken agreement that while you cannot control the dust and the filth of the streets, you can at least keep a small circle of order around yourself. And in that circle you find not only physical comfort, but a sense of belonging. You are part of the quiet battle against the inevitable, side by side with everyone else, each of you holding the line between clean and unclean, one small ritual at a time. By midday, the sun has burned away the thin morning mist, leaving the streets warm and dry, dust curling up from every passing cartwheel. You pull your cloak tighter, not for warmth, but to shield yourself from the grit that drifts in the air. This is the hour when the market is in full swing, and with it comes one of the few opportunities for townsfolk to refresh themselves in small, improvised ways. At the edge of the square, you spot a water carrier setting down his yoke. Two wooden pails sway from the beam across his shoulders, their sloshing contents reflecting the glare of the sun. For a few coins, he will tip his bucket so you can rinse your hands or fill a flask. Many do just that, wiping away the dust of the street before handling food or greeting an acquaintance. A few take a quick splash to the face, sighing at the relief. This exchange of water, fleeting as it is, feels like a transaction, not just of cleanliness, but of civility and unspoken understanding that a little refreshment makes the day more bearable. Nearby, a spice merchant scoops fragrant powders into small paper twists, cinnamon, cloves, pepper. You realize these are not only for cooking, but also for masking smells. A wealthy buyer might carry a pomander, a small perforated metal sphere filled with spices and herbs, dangling from a chain or tucked into a pocket. When passing through a particularly foul street, they'll raise it to their nose, shutting out the stench of refuse and animal dung. Even without knowing why, people understand that a pleasant smell can make the world feel cleaner, if only for a moment. As you wander, you notice how the market itself has its own rules for staying clean. Fishmongers keep their goods on beds of damp rushes to keep them cool and rinse their boards between customers. Butchers splash water over their stalls, letting the runoff carry scraps away into the gutters. Bread sellers brush crumbs from their tables between sales. These are small, repetitive acts, yet they keep the chaos from tipping into outright filth. You pass into a side lane where the dyers work vats of color steaming in the open air. The smell of hot dye and mordants is strong, but you see the workers washing their arms in troughs after each batch, scrubbing at stains with coarse cloths. Their skin is still tinted faintly with blue or red, but these rinses keep the dye from setting too deeply. Here again, the idea isn't perfection, it's prevention. You can't remove every trace, but you can keep it from becoming permanent. On the far edge of the market, a woman sits with a basket of small cloth bundles. She opens one to show you a mixture of dried petals, powdered herbs, and crushed resin. This is potpourri meant to be tucked into chests or hung in rooms to sweeten the air. In winter, when windows stay closed for warmth, such things become all the more important. It's a reminder that cleanliness here is as much about what you breathe as what you see. As you leave the bustle behind, you find yourself on a quiet street that leads toward the bathhouse district. Though some bathhouses have fallen out of favor in certain towns here, they still thrive. You push open the door to find a room hazy with steam. Wooden tubs line the walls, some large enough for 2 or 3 bathers, others small and private. Attendants move between them, adding buckets of hot water, skimming the surface to remove floating debris. A low murmur of conversation fills the air, mingling with the occasional splash. You lower yourself into one of the smaller tubs, the heat seeping into your bones. The water is scented faintly with rosemary, and for a moment, you forget the dust and noise outside. Around you, people scrub at their arms and necks, working the water into their hair with their fingers. In this space, everyone is united by the same goal, to leave feeling lighter, fresher, more human. Yet even here, the water is shared. You can't be sure who bathed before you or what they left behind. You realize that in this world, the idea of pure water is almost a fantasy. What matters is that it's warmer and cleaner than you were before. After your soak, an attendant offers you a linen cloth to dry yourself, and you leave with your hair damp, your skin tingling from the heat. The street outside feels sharper now, the air cooler, the scents of the market more distinct. You know this feeling will fade within hours. Dust will settle again, sweat will rise, but for now, you walk a little straighter. Passing back through the market, you see the afternoon giving way to evening preparations. Stalls are being dismantled, goods packed away, and shopkeepers are sweeping their thresholds. This too is a form of cleaning, not just of spaces, but of the day itself, sweeping away what's left behind so tomorrow can start fresh. And as you turn toward home, you realize that here staying clean is not a single act, but a constant layering of habits, gestures, and scents. It is work that begins again each day, not because yesterday's effort failed, but because the struggle against dirt is as endless as the days themselves. The next morning you wake to the sound of a broom scratching across the packed earth just outside your door. It's the neighbor sweeping away the thin drift of dust and scraps that yesterday's wind and footsteps left behind. You notice how deliberate her movements are, not hurried, not careless. This is the first act of her day, and though it will not keep the dust away for long, it sets the tone for everything that follows. In the medieval world, the fight for cleanliness begins the moment you open your eyes, and it never truly ends. You start your own morning ritual, pouring a small measure of water into the basin. The pitcher is lighter than yesterday. You will need to refill it before evening, but the water is still cool. You wipe your face, rubbing a little longer at the corners of your eyes, then run damp fingers through your hair to press back the stray strands. There's a simple satisfaction in this, the act of reclaiming yourself from the night of marking a line between the day before and the one that has just begun. Stepping outside, you decide to head toward the edge of town, where the fields begin. Out here, the air is clearer, the smell of tilled soil replacing the sour tang of the streets. You pass a small farm where a woman kneels by a wooden trough, scrubbing her hands and forearms with handfuls of gritty sand. She explains, smiling, that it scours away not just the dirt, but the smell of the pigs she tends. Sand ash, even crushed seashells, these are the medieval equivalents of your soaps and scrubs, rough enough to strip away grime, yet always at the risk of roughening the skin. A little further on, you find a shepherd washing his feet in a shallow stream. He sits on a smooth stone boots beside him and pours water over his toes from a small wooden cup. He does this every day, he says, because walking the fields leaves his feet raw if he doesn't keep them clean. He rubs them with a sprig of thyme before drying them on a cloth. He believes it wards off infection, though the science behind it is centuries away. You realize that for many here, the body parts most cared for are those most used: hands for work, feet for walking, face for presenting yourself to the world. The stream itself is busy with activity. A pair of young girls stand knee-deep, shaking out lengths of homespun linen in the current. Their mother sits nearby, combing through the fabric to pick away burrs and thorns. The water shimmers with plant matter and tiny bits of debris, but it's clear enough for rinsing, and that's what matters. Downstream, a man kneels with his horse, splashing water onto its legs to cool it after the morning's plowing. The water that cleans him will clean the horse and then flow on to someone else. In this cycle, there's no separation between human and animal use. The stream serves them all, carrying away what it can, bringing fresh water only in the next rainfall. Returning toward town, you pass the laundress's hut. Today, she's bent over a boiling pot, stirring a tangle of clothes with a long wooden pole. The steam carries the scent of soap root and ash, and the fabric inside is linen white garments, most likely church surplices or a wealthy household's underclothes. Boiling is a luxury possible only for the pools with enough fuel to burn. It kills lice, loosens stains, and leaves the cloth warm and soft. But wood is precious, so most washing is done cold, relying on the strength of the scrub and the patience of the washer. You pause to watch her work. She lifts a shirt from the pot with the pole steam rising in the sunlight and drapes it over a wooden frame to dry. Each piece is handled with care, though you can see the wear in the cloth, the frayed cuffs, the faint discoloration that never fully fades. This is as clean as it will ever be, and it will be enough. Later in the day, you find yourself by the church again. A small group has gathered at the stone basin near the entrance, washing their hands before going inside for a wedding. Some cup water to splash over their faces, smoothing their hair afterward. It's not just about cleanliness. It's about being presentable before God and neighbor. You think of the mother you saw last night combing her children's hair by the fire, and realize that this gesture washing before entering a sacred place is part of the same thread. Cleanliness here is woven into honor, respect, and ritual. As the sun dips toward the horizon, you follow a cart laden with barrels toward the bathhouse. It's a supply day when fresh water from the nearby spring is brought in to replace the old. People wait outside, chatting in low voices, some with towels draped over their shoulders. Inside, the tubs have been scrubbed. The floors swept the air, already warming from the fires beneath the cauldrons. Soon, the room will be full of steam and quiet conversation, the work of the day melting away into the heat. You stand in the doorway for a moment, watching as the first bather lowers himself into the water, his shoulders loosening with relief. Outside, the world is still dusty, still unpredictable, but in here, for a short while, there is the illusion of complete cleanliness. And you begin to understand that this illusion is worth as much as the act itself, because in a world where perfection is impossible, even the feeling of being clean is a treasure. The bathhouse's warmth lingers on your skin long after you step back into the evening air. You walk slowly, feeling the contrast between the clean dampness of your hair and the dusty breeze drifting in from the market road. Lanterns are being lit, one by one, their light spilling onto cobblestones, still carrying the faint heat of the day. In the hush that settles after sunset, you begin to notice how the rhythms of cleanliness shift once night falls. You follow the narrow street to a row of modest homes where doors stand open to let the last of the daylight in. Inside one, a family is gathered around a table washing their hands in a shared basin before supper. The father dips his in first, then offers the towel to his eldest son, who passes it to his sister. It's not a matter of thorough scrubbing, just enough to wipe away the day's grit before eating. Bread is broken with clean hands here, even if the water itself is far from pristine. You can smell the meal cooking, a stew of lentils and onions, earthy and comforting, the kind of scent that stays in a household's walls for days. Farther down, you see another form of nightly hygiene bedding being shaken out. A young woman stands by the doorway, snapping a woolen blanket to dislodge straw and dust before bringing it back inside. In this world, bedding is rarely washed in full. The effort of hauling and drying such heavy cloth is enormous. Instead, the goal is to keep it as fresh as possible between washings, to air out the smell of sweat and smoke that inevitably clings. Some households sprinkle crushed lavender or rosemary between the layers of bedding, a small defense against lice and odor. At the end of the lane, a candle burns in a small window. Inside, an elderly man sits on a stool by the fire, a wooden bowl of water on the floor before him. He's washing his feet with slow, deliberate care, drying them with a scrap of linen. In many parts of the medieval world, washing the feet at day's end is as much a comfort ritual as a hygienic one, soothing the aches from hours of standing or walking and ensuring a cleaner night's rest. For pilgrims or travelers, this act is sacred enough to be offered by hosts as a gesture of welcome. You step back into the open square where a few merchants linger to finish their business under torchlight. One sells candles made with beeswax, rare and expensive, while another offers small clay pots of scented salve. The salve, made from animal fat mixed with herbs, can be rubbed on the skin to soften dryness from the sun and wind. It's also another layer of scent, part of the medieval belief that fragrance itself has a protective quality. On the far side of the square, you hear the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. You approach to find him finishing his work for the day, the forge still glowing. Beside the anvil is a bucket of water used for cooling hot metal, but also for washing his hands and face once the tools are put away. The water is blackened from soot, but it's better than carrying the forge's grime into the house. He grins as he splashes his face, rubbing the water into his beard, and you see the steam curl from his skin in the cool night air. Leaving the square, you wander toward the edge of town where the stables are. A stable boy is brushing down a horse, the strokes steady and practiced. When he's done, he washes his hands in the trough before eating his supper. You notice how many of these small acts, hand-washing, bedding, aired feet, bathed, are tied directly to the end of the day's labor. Cleanliness here isn't a separate chore. It's the closing note to the rhythm of work, the thing that marks the shift from public duty to private rest. Back near your lodging, you see a woman pouring the day's dirty wash water into the gutter. It runs away toward the river, carrying with it the faint scent of herbs and the cloudy traces of soap. She rinses the basin with a splash of fresh water and sets it upside down to dry, ready for tomorrow. This, too, is part of the cycle. You don't just clean yourself, you tend to the tools that make cleaning possible. The streets grow quieter still, and from a distance you hear the church bell toll for the final prayers. Windows closed, doors are latched, and the last fires are banked for the night. You return to your own straw bed, the faint scent of rosemary in your pillow, and settle beneath the blanket. In the darkness, you realize that here keeping clean is less about chasing an unreachable perfection, and more about holding on to small comforts, small dignities against the constant tide of dust, sweat, and smoke. It's an unending battle, yes, but one fought gently in rituals passed from hand to hand day after day. The next day begins with the sound of water sloshing in buckets outside your door. Peeking out, you see two young boys lugging them from the town's well, their bare feet splashing as they walk. Their tunics are damp at the hem, but they grin at each other, proud to be trusted with such an important chore. In a place where water is the lifeblood of the household, fetching it is as central to cleanliness as the washing itself. Without it, nothing else can follow. You join the slow-moving stream of people making their way toward the well. The rope creaks as bucket after bucket is lowered into the depths, the splash below echoing faintly before the haul begins. You notice that the water drawers work with a quiet efficiency. No one lets the bucket drag on the ground or spill too much. Every drop has a purpose. It will be divided between cooking, drinking, washing the face and hands, and perhaps a basin for feet before bed. Those who can afford to store extra in large ceramic jars to avoid multiple trips in a day. From the well, you wander toward the guild district. Here, artisans shape not only goods for trade, but also tools for maintaining the fragile balance between dirt and cleanliness. A carpenter is working on a new wooden frame for drying clothes, two long poles crossed at the top, sturdy enough to hold heavy wool garments. Across the street, A potter is firing glazed basins, their smooth interiors easier to clean than the rough wooden tubs used by most. Even the blacksmith plays a role crafting iron hooks for hanging water buckets or racks for holding herbs above the hearth so they dry without attracting insects. Following the narrow lane, you find yourself outside the home of a cloth merchant. Rolls of linen are stacked neatly by the window, their crisp folds a reminder that clean fabric starts long before the laundry yard. The merchant explains that the whitest linen fetches the highest price, not only because it looks finer, but because it speaks of proper care and laundering. Bleaching is a skill here often involving sunlight and repeated rinsing. A garment that holds its whiteness through the season marks its owner as attentive and respectable. Past the merchant's shop, you come upon a row of houses with small gardens out back. Between rows of leeks and cabbages, bundles of herbs hang from poles, rosemary, lavender, mint. These are not merely for cooking. In summer, they are dried and tucked into clothing chests, sewn into little sachets, or scattered between layers of bedding. Their scents linger, masking the smells of sweat, wood smoke, and the oils that seep naturally from skin. A sweet-smelling home is a sign of order and care, even if the floor is still scattered with straw. You pause at one doorway, where a mother is combing her daughter's hair in the sunlight. The comb is carved from bone, its teeth fine enough to catch even the smallest pests. The girl sits still, wincing only when the comb tugs too sharply. Every so often, the mother inspects the comb's teeth, flicking away what she finds into a small clay dish. This daily inspection is as much about comfort as it is about health. Unchecked lice can make life unbearable, and their bites can lead to infection. Here, the comb is as vital a tool as the cooking pot or the water jug. A little further on, you come across a washerwoman returning from the river, a bundle of damp clothes balanced on her hip. She tells you that she beat them against flat stones until her arms ached, but the dirt came out at last. She'll lay them out on the grass to dry, turning them every so often so the sun can bleach them evenly. In the absence of chemical detergents, sunlight itself is a cleaning agent, scouring away not just stains, but smells. As you return toward the town square, you notice how many of these acts happen in full view of others. Water-fetched clothes, scrubbed hair, combed on the doorstep. Cleanliness is a communal rhythm here, visible in the streets and courtyards. No one has the luxury of hiding their habits. Everyone knows who keeps their clothes aired, who draws fresh water daily, who lets their linens yellow with neglect. It's not gossip so much as an unspoken ledger of respectability. The sun climbs higher and the smells of the day begin to gather bread, baking hides, tanning the faint scent of herbs drifting from open shutters. You realize that medieval cleanliness is never a finished state, but a series of overlapping layers, some added, some stripped away throughout the day. A washed face at morning might be dust-covered by noon. Fresh bedding gains the scent of wood smoke within hours. Every act of cleaning is temporary, yet each one matters because it marks an intention to push back even briefly against the weight of the world's grime. And so you keep walking, following these small, deliberate gestures from one end of the town to the other, piecing together the quiet truth that keeping clean here is not about chasing perfection. It's about preserving dignity, creating moments of comfort, and weaving those moments into the unending fabric of daily life. The day unfolds into the warm, bustling heart of afternoon, and you drift toward the edge of town where the smells and sounds change once again. Here the air carries the tang of wet leather from the tanner's yard, the sharper scent of boiling lye from the soap-maker's workshop, and just faintly the sweetness of crushed herbs drying in the sun. It's in this mix that another truth of medieval cleanliness reveals itself. It is rarely solitary. Whole trades exist to support it, and each carries its own craft risks and traditions. You pause at the soap-maker's door, watching him stir a cauldron with a long wooden paddle. The mixture is thick, bubbling sluggishly, the color of weathered parchment. He explains that he uses animal fat from the butcher and lye made from wood ash sifted through water. Sometimes he adds herbs or dried flowers for scent, but mostly the soap is plain, valued for function, not beauty. When it's ready, he pours the hot mixture into wooden molds lined with cloth, where it will harden into rough, heavy blocks. Customers will cut their own pieces at home, using them sparingly for laundry, occasionally for the body, but rarely for hair. The lye can burn the scalp, he says, and leave hair brittle. Just beyond the soapmaker's yard, you find the cooper mending a wooden washtub. His hands are dark with pitch, and the smell clings to him even as he works. He points to the iron hoops that hold the planks together. Without these, the tub would leak and warp in days. In a world without indoor plumbing, these tubs are the heart of any household large enough to own one. They are where clothes are soaked, where herbs are steeped for infusions, and where a rare full-body wash might be taken. You move on, drawn toward the gentle clatter of pottery in the next stall. The potter is selling shallow glazed bowls perfect for washing hands or holding herbs for scented water. She runs her fingers along the smooth surface of one, telling you that a well-glazed bowl doesn't trap dirt the way unglazed earthenware does, making it more hygienic. For wealthier households, she also makes covered jars to store rosewater or vinegar liquids prized for their cleansing properties. Farther down the lane, a tailor sits by the open window of his workshop, brushing a fine wool tunic. He uses a stiff bristled brush to lift away dust and grit, a daily habit that extends the life of the cloth and keeps it looking respectable between washings. He shows you a small jar of powdered alum he sometimes sprinkles into the folds. It discourages moths and leaves behind a faint mineral freshness. The care of clothing here is as much about preservation as presentation, and keeping garments in good condition is part of the broader idea of cleanliness. Crossing the street, you pass a small apothecary shop, its shelves crowded with jars of dried leaves, roots, and resins. The apothecary greets you warmly, eager to explain how his wares play a role in daily hygiene. Sage leaves boiled in water make a rinse for the mouth, he says, keeping breath sweet and teeth free from the worst buildup. Vinegar mixed with rosemary can be dabbed on the skin to freshen it. Myrrh and frankincense are burned to purify the air, especially after illness. You realize that here clean extends beyond the visible. It includes what is inhaled, tasted, and carried in the atmosphere around you. Leaving the apothecary, you follow a narrow alley to the riverside, where the afternoon sun glints on the water. Washerwomen are at work again, this time rinsing freshly dyed cloth. The colors bleed into the current, deep reds, soft blues before fading downstream. The women laugh together as they work, calling out across the water to a group of children who are filling jugs for their families. The children splash one another in passing, the cold water bringing shrieks and giggles. You watch one boy pause to wash his dusty feet before pulling on his shoes, an act so casual yet so telling. It's not just about cleanliness for show, but about comfort, about feeling human after a day's wear. As the sun begins to lower, you notice how the town slowly shifts toward evening routines. The baker sweeps his shop floor, tossing the day's crumbs into the gutter. The butcher scrubs his block with vinegar and salt, rubbing hard to keep the smell of raw meat from lingering overnight. Even the tavern keeper leans out to throw a bucket of water over the doorstep, clearing away the dust and sticky spills from the day's patrons. These acts are part habit, part necessity, and part silent agreement. No matter how rough the day has been, you end it with at least the attempt at order. You realize now that medieval cleanliness is a network, artisans crafting the tools, merchants supplying the materials, households weaving these resources into their daily rituals. No one stands apart from it. Each plays a role, from the soap maker stirring his pot to the child rinsing his feet at the river's edge. And in that network there is a shared understanding that while the dirt of life will always return, the act of washing it away, even briefly, is what makes tomorrow possible. The next morning you wake to the muffled sounds of life already in motion, hooves clopping on cobblestones, water being poured into basins, the scrape of a broom on stone. Through the small window you see the first hints of sunlight, catching in the mist that hovers over the town's rooftops. You dress and step outside, feeling the damp coolness of the early air settle on your skin. This is the hour when many households perform the quiet, essential tasks of cleaning before the day grows hot and busy. You pass a doorway where a woman kneels with a short broom made of bound twigs, sweeping the straw-strewn floor of her home. The air smells faintly of smoke and something sharper, perhaps vinegar. Indeed, when you glance inside, you see her wiping a small table with a cloth dipped in it. She explains that vinegar not only freshens the surface, but also discourages flies. It's one of the simplest, most widely available cleansers in the medieval world, and its uses stretch from kitchen to sick room. Farther along, you come to a courtyard where two men are tending to the well. They've drawn up the bucket, but instead of carrying it away, they're scrubbing the wooden sides with a stiff brush, removing the moss and slime that build up in the damp. A well is more than a water source. It's a communal trust. If it's fouled, the whole neighborhood suffers, so cleaning it is a shared responsibility. You watch them work in companionable silence, each knowing the other's movements without needing to speak. Continuing on, you find the open doors of a small church, the faint sound of chanting floating out. Just outside, a stone basin stands ready, its surface worn smooth by generations of hands. A woman is rinsing her fingers before entering, using the opportunity to tidy her hair as well. She smooths it back beneath her linen veil, checks the edges in the reflection of the water, and walks inside. Here, physical cleanliness is an act of respect and preparation, inseparable from the spiritual. Leaving the church, you take a side street toward the laundry yard where today's wash is in full swing. A young man works the treadle of a large wooden wheel, lifting water from a nearby stream into troughs for soaking. Women bend over the troughs, pounding clothes with paddles or rubbing them against ridged boards. A little girl runs between them, carrying sprigs of mint and thyme from a nearby garden, which are crushed into the rinse water for scent. The smell is fresh and sharp, a brief contrast to the earthier odors that cling to the yard. At the far end, a length of fine linen is being whitened. The washer lays it over a slanted board and pours water mixed with lye down its surface, letting it run into the grass below. She explains that the lye lifts the discoloration, and afterward the linen will be spread in the sun for hours. This sun bleaching is as much a part of cleanliness as the wash itself, for it brightens the fabric and leaves it smelling of open air. From the laundry yard, you follow the stream back toward the market. Along the bank, a man crouches to wash vegetables, the water swirling away dirt from their roots. A few steps downstream, a boy is rinsing a wooden bowl, scrubbing it with handfuls of sand. You notice how the stream serves many at once, its current carrying away debris from each task, its movement as constant as the town's need for it. Back in the market, shopkeepers are setting up their stalls. One pauses to dust off his table with a piece of damp cloth. Another sprinkles a little vinegar over the boards where meat will be displayed, rubbing it in with the flat of his palm. You realize that much of medieval cleanliness is about preparing spaces to be used again, resetting them for the next round of life. Near the edge of the square, you spot a small group of children gathered around an older woman. She's checking their hair comb in hand, and the children fidget as she works. Every so often, she pauses to crush a leaf between her fingers and rub it along a parting in the hair. She tells you it's pennyroyal, believed to repel lice and fleas. The inspection is as routine here as morning prayers, an ongoing defense against pests that no household can ignore. As the sun rises higher, the town shifts into the steady hum of daily work. You realize that these morning rituals, wiping tables, airing clothes, rinsing hands, checking for lice, are more than chores. They are acts of renewal, a way of reclaiming the day before it is swallowed by the demands of labor and trade. Cleanliness here is less about erasing the past than about setting the stage for what's to come. And as you walk on, you feel the rhythm of it settling into you. The sense that in this world, the line between clean and dirty is drawn anew every morning, and the drawing of it is an act of quiet resilience. By midday, the sun beats down harder, drawing up the smells of the town in layers: baking bread, tanned leather herbs, drying in open windows, and underneath it all, the faint sourness of waste that no amount of sweeping can entirely hide. You take the long route toward the river, knowing that in this heat, many will gather there for one of the few moments in the day when work and cleaning blur together. The riverbank is alive with motion. On one side, washerwomen bend over the shallows, pounding clothes with smooth wooden paddles. The slap of wet cloth against stone carries across the water, mingling with the splashes of children playing downstream. Buckets are lowered in and drawn out, their contents shimmering in the light, ready to be hauled back to kitchens for cooking or to hearths for warming into washwater. You watch one woman rinse a linen shirt, wringing it hard before spreading it on the grass. She sprinkles it with a fine dust of ash from her apron pocket, explaining that the ash will work with the sun to brighten the fabric as it dries. Beside her, another pours a bucket of soapy water into the current, sending a faint froth drifting away. The river takes everything: dirt, soap, dye, and all, and still remains the town's lifeline. A little further along, a fisherman squats by the water's edge, washing his hands in the cool current. He rubs them briskly, not to remove every trace of fish, but to dull the smell before he heads to the market. From a small pouch, he pulls out a sprig of mint and crushes it in his palms, letting the green scent mask what's left. This small flourish is not for himself, but for his customers, a sign that he takes pride in his trade. On the opposite bank, a group of travelers has stopped to rest. One woman kneels with a shallow basin, pouring water over her feet and rubbing them dry with a strip of cloth. Another sits with her hair unbound, dipping the ends into the river and combing through with her fingers. Travelers know that keeping clean on the road is as much about prevention as comfort wash when you can before the chance slips away. You wander upstream where the water runs clearer away from the busiest banks. Here a single man stands knee-deep washing a wool cloak. The wet fabric clings heavily to his arms, and when he's done, he lays it over a flat rock to drain. He tells you the cloak will smell of the river for days, but at least the smoke and sweat of last season's wear will be gone. In a world where garments are worn year after year, such washing is as much about memory as freshness, removing the imprint of the months before so the cloth feels ready for the months ahead. As you return toward town, you pass a small orchard. Beneath one tree, a girl is brushing her teeth with a slender twig. She chews one end until it frays into bristles, then runs it along her teeth and gums. The twig is from a walnut tree, she says, good for freshening the mouth and strengthening the teeth. You think of the apothecary's sage rinse, the herbal infusions steeped for hair and skin, and you realize that here cleaning is often as much about plants as it is about water. Back in the market square, you see that some vendors have set out bowls of scented water for customers to wash their hands before sampling goods. A baker offers one near his stall, the surface of the water sprinkled with rose petals. He tells you it's a tradition on feast days and market fairs, a gesture of goodwill as much as hygiene. Shoppers lean over it, cupping their hands to rinse the petals, sticking briefly to their skin before dropping back into the bowl. By late afternoon, the heat begins to fade, and the shadows lengthen across the cobblestones. People begin the slow work of closing stalls, sweeping away the dust and scraps left behind. A butcher pours the last of his vinegar wash over his block, the scent rising sharply as it mixes with the day's heat. Across the square, a young boy gathers the discarded rushes from a shop floor, carrying them away to be replaced with fresh, clean bundles tomorrow. You start to see the pattern again, this endless loop of use, wear, and renewal. No matter how small the act, each one pushes back against the day's accumulation of dirt and disorder. It's not about winning the fight. It's about showing up for it every day with whatever tools and water and herbs you have at hand. And as you make your way home, the sounds of the river fade behind you, replaced by the quiet satisfaction that comes from witnessing a community constantly, patiently tending to itself. The evening brings a softer light, the heat of the day ebbing into a gentler warmth. You follow the long shadows stretching across the square and into the narrower lanes where homes are closing themselves against the night. Doors stand ajar for the moment, letting the last of the fresh air pass through before shutters are drawn. Inside, you catch glimpses of people tending to the final tasks of the day, rituals of cleanliness that serve as a quiet prelude to rest. In one small house, a mother is wiping the faces of her children with a damp cloth. They sit patiently on low stools, feet dangling above the floor, eyes following her every move. She works carefully, as though each touch is a blessing, and when she's done, she smooths their hair and tucks the cloth back into the basin. The water is cloudy now, a visible measure of the day's work, and play lifted away from their skin. Across the lane, a man sits on the threshold, removing his boots. He knocks them together, releasing a cloud of dust, then sets them aside and rubs his feet with a sprig of crushed rosemary. The scent rises warm and sharp into the air. For him, the act is more than comfort. It's a way of clearing the day from his body, of stepping into the night, as if into another life. A little further along, you find a young woman spreading her bedding in the doorway to catch the last of the sun. She shakes the straw-filled mattress briskly, sending a faint drift of chaff into the air. Bedding is rarely washed here, but it is regularly aired, the sun and wind working together to strip away some of the stale scent and to keep pests at bay. Once the light fades, she will bring it back inside still warm from the day. At the end of the street, a small group has gathered at a public trough. They take turns rinsing their hands and faces, some laughing, as they flick droplets at each other. You notice a man dipping his wooden comb into the water before running it through his hair. He explains that it softens the tangles, makes the combing easier. Beside him, an older woman washes a small linen cap, wringing it out and laying it over the trough's edge to dry overnight. You continue your walk and hear the low murmur of voices from an open window. Peering in, you see a couple sitting side by side, one holding a candle while the other tends to their fingernails with a small knife. This is another form of medieval grooming, paring nails to keep dirt from lodging under them, not for beauty, but for health. In a world where work is done with the hands keeping them clean is both a practical and social necessity. Farther on, you come across a tavern just as the evening crowd begins to arrive. The keeper is outside throwing a bucket of water across the doorstep to wash away the dust and spills from the afternoon. He sweeps it clean, then scatters fresh rushes on the floor inside to absorb odors and soften the sound of boots. In the glow of the lanterns, it looks welcoming, almost festive, a space remade for the night ahead. As you return toward your lodging, you pass the bathhouse. The door is open, steam curling lazily into the street. A few latecomers are still soaking their quiet conversation, mingling with the gentle splash of water. The scent of herbs drifts out, mint and chamomile tonight, wrapping the street in a calm that contrasts with the day's noise. For those who bathe this late, it's a way of carrying that warmth straight to bed, letting the day's grit and weight dissolve before sleep. Back in your own room, you find your basin filled with fresh water set there by a thoughtful hand. You wash slowly, savoring the coolness, letting it run over your face, neck, and arms. Then you lie back on your straw mattress, breathing in the faint scent of the herbs you tucked into your bedding days ago. Outside, the sounds of the town fade to a hush, broken only by the occasional hoofbeat or muffled voice. You realize as your eyes grow heavy that here cleanliness is not a momentary act, but a thread that winds through the day, from the first sweep of the broom in the morning to the last splash of water before bed. And in that thread lies a sense of rhythm, order, and care, holding the fabric of daily life together against the pull of time and dust. Morning comes again, not with the jangle of an alarm, but with the slow bloom of light through the shutters and the first stirrings of the street below. You wake to the muffled scrape of a broom against stone. Someone is already sweeping the lane outside. The air drifting in is cooler than yesterday, carrying the faint damp of overnight dew. It smells cleaner too, as though the world has been rinsed while you slept. You rise and pour the last of the water from your pitcher into the basin. This small morning wash has become a ritual you can't imagine skipping. The cloth, cool and faintly scented from drying overnight near the herbs, feels almost luxurious as you wipe your face, then your neck, then your hands. You linger over your nails, rubbing them clean, then comb your hair carefully, catching the little snags before they turn to knots. You know that in a few hours the dust will have returned, but this moment, this sense of having claimed yourself from the night, will carry you into the day. Stepping outside, you walk toward the fields at the town's edge. Farmers are already at work, turning the earth and watering rows of young plants. At a shallow ditch, a boy is filling a pail for the oxen, but before he carries it away, he splashes water on his face and forearms. He grins at you, dripping, as if to say that even here in the midst of labor, there's room for a touch of freshness. Following the path along the ditch, you come to a small cluster of cottages. Outside one, a woman is shaking out a large woolen cloak, sending a cloud of dust into the sunlight. She beats it with a stick, loosening the dirt embedded deep in the fibers, then drapes it over a fence to air. These heavy garments are rarely washed, so regular beating and airing are essential to keeping them wearable. Another woman nearby is scrubbing wooden bowls with ash and sand, her hands moving in firm circles until the grain runs smooth again. She rinses them with water from a jug, tipping the dirty rinse onto the garden soil so nothing is wasted. The path leads you to the river, once more quieter now than during the washing hours. A lone fisherman rinses his net, the fibers catching the light as he stretches them across the bank to dry. The smell of the river clings to the net, but he says it's better than letting the fish smell rot into the cords. Downstream, a woman kneels in the shallows, not washing clothes this time, but her own hair. She pours water slowly from a clay jug, working her fingers through each strand, then combs it with deliberate strokes before braiding it tightly. She tells you it will stay cleaner longer this way, tucked away from dust and grasping hands. On your way back toward town, you pass a small orchard. Beneath the trees, a man is picking herbs, mint, sage, and rosemary, which he bundles tightly with twine. He explains that they'll be hung in the kitchen, where their scent will mingle with the smoke and cooking, keeping the air fresher. Some will be ground into powder for dry washing hands, some steeped into vinegar for wiping down tables, and a few sprigs tucked into clothing chests. The uses are endless, and all of them carry the same aim: to make the space you inhabit a little more bearable, a little more your own. As you enter the town, you notice the daily cycle of cleaning already in motion. Shopkeepers sweep their thresholds, tossing the sweepings into the gutter. The baker dusts flour from his sleeves before greeting customers, while the fishmonger pours a thin trickle of water over his stall to rinse away the morning's work. Even the cobbler is outside scrubbing the day's first pair of boots with a damp cloth before beginning his repairs. Near the well, a group of children lines up to have their hair inspected by a woman with a fine-toothed comb. She works quickly, flicking anything unwelcome into a dish of oil to drown it. The children wait their turn with mild impatience, knowing that the inspection is as inevitable as fetching water or sweeping the floor. Back at your lodging, you refill your pitcher from the well and set it inside the door ready for the next wash. You take a moment to wipe the small table where you'll eat your evening meal, dipping the cloth into a shallow bowl of vinegar water. The scent rises sharp and clean, a promise that for a little while at least, the space will be yours, fresh ordered and ready. It strikes you as you step back and look around that this endless rhythm of cleansing of body clothing tools and home is not driven by the fantasy of perfection. It is about small victories, about carving out pockets of comfort in a world where dirt, odor, and decay are always waiting to return. Here, every sweep, every rinse, every drop of water is a quiet act of defiance against the inevitable. The days blend into one another, each with its own quiet cycle of gathering dirt and pushing it back again. By now you know the patterns, as if they were your own. The morning basins filled and emptied, the midday rinses in streams and troughs, the evening combing of hair by firelight. These are not moments of luxury, but of necessity. And yet in their repetition, they hold something almost meditative. This morning you follow the narrow lane out to the market before the stalls are fully open. The air is crisp, still free of the day's heavier smells, and the square is alive with the sound of preparation. A baker sweeps his threshold before the first loaf leaves the oven. Across the way, a butcher scrubs his block with a handful of coarse salt and vinegar, the briny scent cutting through yesterday's residue. The fishmonger has already rinsed his stall with bucketfuls of water, letting it run in thin streams toward the gutter. You see how each trade begins its day with a kind of cleansing ritual, resetting the space so it's fit to receive the day's work. From the square, you make your way toward the riverside. Washerwomen are already at it, their paddles striking wet cloth in a slow, steady rhythm. The air here smells of river water and wood smoke from nearby hearths. One woman hums as she works, pausing to rub a stubborn stain with ash before plunging the fabric back into the current. The river is both the town's wash basin and its waste pipe. What cleans also carries away the remnants of cleaning. Further upstream, you find a small group of women gathered in the shallows, combing each other's hair for lice. They chat as they work, the conversation flowing as easily as the water. One produces a sprig of lavender from her pouch, rubbing it into her scalp for scent. They laugh at some shared joke, and you realize that these small acts of cleanliness are also acts of connection, binding people together as surely as any feast or festival. By midday, the sun is high and the streets are busy again. You pass a tanner's yard, the acrid smell sharp in your nose, and notice a boy standing outside with a bucket washing his hands and arms before carrying hides to the market. A little further on, a seamstress sits at her doorway, brushing the dust from a newly finished garment before handing it to her customer. Every act, no matter how small, is a way of sending something into the world in better condition than it was received. As the afternoon fades, you walk back toward the bathhouse for one last visit. The door stands open, steam curling out into the cool air. Inside, the wooden tubs are filled and ready, the scent of mint and chamomile heavy in the air. You lower yourself into the heat, feeling the day slip from your skin. Around you, others soak in silence, eyes half closed, letting the water carry away not just dirt, but fatigue. It's clear now here the bath is as much about the spirit as it is about the body. When you finally leave, the streets are bathed in twilight. Shopkeepers sweep their thresholds. Again, tavern doors are washed down before the night's crowd, and families shake out their bedding in the last light. You return to your own small room, wash your hands and face, and settle into bed. The faint scent of herbs lingers in the straw pillow, and outside the sounds of the town fade into quiet. You realize as you close your eyes that in the medieval world, cleanliness is never complete, never permanent. But it is constant, threaded through every day in gestures both grand and humble. It is in the sweep of a broom, the pour of a bucket, the stroke of a comb. It is in the way people carve out moments of order and freshness against the unending tide of dust, mud, and time. And in that constancy lies its real power, not in banishing the dirt forever, but in affirming day after day that life is worth tending to.